I know we can do better than that. Give him a big round of applause. There's 3 video presentations from Premier David Burt, BIU, and the future leaders. At this time, I will ask the next 3 people to stand up, and they are Brother Graham Bowe, Sister Laverne Ferber, and Brother Derek Burgess. Keith Lee, can you come this way, please? We're going to help celebrate their birthdays. Graham celebrates today, Laverne celebrates tomorrow, and Derek celebrates on Sunday. So Keith Lee is going to help us kick in and start the happy birthday. So we're all going to sing happy birthday to these 3 people, please. Please stand. To you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Laverne. Happy birthday to you. Who are you? Yes, give them a big round of applause as they celebrate their birthdays, everybody. At this time, I will call Brother President Chris Ferber to the podium, please.
Good evening, brothers. Good evening, brothers and sisters. Ladies and gentlemen, I trust the evening thus far has been acceptable. Yes? Just before the 3 future leaders come to give you a short presentation this evening, for those of you who heard last year, in 2017, you actually witnessed 4 young persons come and make presentations last year. 1 young brother and 3 young sisters. Each of them had their own message to bring last year at our Labor Day banquet. After that, the BIU's executive board decided that we'll make that an annual feature to have our future leaders speak at our Labor Day banquet. But last year, you would also remember, those of you who were here, I asked those young people to stand up because those tables were sponsored by individuals. Well, the future leaders table is sponsored again tonight, and it's sponsored by Mr. Patrick Tannock. So, Mr. Tannock, we certainly want to thank you, sir. Can you stand, Mr. Tannock? Where is he? He's not in the room? Oh, yes, thank you. Certainly, I believe that the future leaders have another message for you tonight. I'm not going to steal that thunder, so I think Brother Andre can introduce the first one, the second one, and the third one. And then you will also hear from Ryan Robinson, Parent Chief, after the 3 future leaders speak, because Ryan Robinson, Parent Chief, is the one that organized this entire program. And as I said to him tonight, it's no more than fitting that he be heard, because last year he was not here. He went back overseas to school. Since it's Thursday night, he can explain to you exactly why he came up with the idea about future leaders and the need that he saw for it. Thank you.
At this time, can we put our hands together for Ryan Robinson? I don't have that list. Okay. Okay. Okay, yeah. Rihanna DeFront. Can we call to the podium Rihanna DeFront? Marley Todd, Jaden Ferber Jacobs, and Brother Ryan Robinson, Parent Chief.
Is there Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. Just hold on for a brief second, because I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be a video going on. Just waiting. So, yeah. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. This is the real deal. Here we go. Okay, my name is Rena DeFonce. I am a future leader who currently attends the Berkeley Institute. If you were here last, yeah, let's give it up. Okay. If you were here last year, you would have heard from a few students who were involved in the Future Leaders Program, which is a summer initiative which is created to inspire young people, like myself, to engage in various issues affecting the community through mentorship, academic study, community service, and field experiences. This program allowed us, as the youth, to indulge in unspoken topics as I and two of my fellow future leaders, Jaden Ferber Jacobs and Molly Saw, will go on to speak about. On our first field experience, we were tasked to go out into the public and give a survey on what's the most pressing issues of Bermuda. Many of the public expressed serious concerns with today's youth. Some believe that the youth are disrespectful, or that the youth are caught up, or simply that we don't care about the issues and are simply oblivious to what is going on around us. Some of these might as well be some true factors, but I'm reminded of a great quote by J.B. Priestley, who says, "It is the youth that is most impressionable." This means that as the youth, the future of Bermuda, we learn by influence. We learn by the examples set before us. In times of uncertainty, many people look to leaders, someone to follow, and strong people to surround ourselves with. And there are many. During the time of the Banquet riots of 1965, many minds turned to the names of Dr. Barbara Bowl, Brother Robert Johnson, Brother Kerwin Frederick Rattery, Brother Kenneth Pohl, Brother Vivian Leroy Ming, Brother George Washington de Silva, and many more who had the courage to take a stand. All these people, all these fighters, all these leaders fought to give us, the workers, a chance towards a fair Bermuda. They fought to give the working class equal opportunities. We have had many great leaders in the past that will be remembered and mentioned throughout our history. We look to follow these leaders, but we should not always wait for someone to stand up for us. We shouldn't wait for leaders to pop out. We need to be the change that we want to see. During the immigration protest of 2016, I'm so sorry, I got stuck. Okay. We must remember persons such as Miss Edna Matthey, the lady who went on a hunger strike. Miss Matthey stated that when people are coming at you with extreme measures, you must meet them with extreme measures. Although the issue which sparked the protest revolved around pathways to status, Miss Matthey was concerned about a lot more. She spoke about Bermuda's sleeping in cars and 3 and 4 families doubling up with only 2 people working. Her fight was for equality of life. She wanted to prove the true strength that we Bermudians have. Miss Matthey's sole decision to go up upon the hill spawned a whole movement which will one day be remembered in history, just like the Banquet riots. She was followed by persons such as Reverend Nicholas Tweed and the People's Campaign, who were determined to progress towards a fairer Bermuda. Throughout the Future Leaders program, we were visited by various speakers who left an impression on us by expanding our knowledge, engaging with us, and giving us, as young people, examples of leaders to follow. In our unit on leadership and self-determination, human rights and constitutional lawyer Eugene Johnston spoke to us about our roots and history. He showed me that not everything we are taught can be trusted blindly. He spoke about Africa, specifically ancient Congo, before colonialism, where instead of voting as we do today, there was a system of consensual decision-making. in which each citizen had to be heard on the issue that was at hand. And before, all group members would spend as much time as it took to unite around views for everyone to come to a vision decision based on sensuous. In this case, the leader's job was not to make decisions on everyone's behalf, but to help the group to come together to make a decision as a whole. In this way, every single individual was a leader in their own way, under the principles of self-determination. In our academic text for the Future Leaders program, we read a quote by a great historian by the name of Runoko Rashidi, who recently said, "I fear that when people say we need leaders, what they're actually saying is we need someone to tell us what to think, to tell us what to do, to die for our sins, the principle of which one is in action. We have had a lot of leaders. We have had a lot of martyrs. Let's try to look in the mirror to see if we can find those very leaders that we say we are much in need of." Overall, this means that we should be the leaders we are desperately looking for. Question information being handed to you. Don't wait for someone else to do it for you. Because what if that someone else never comes? Then what? The time has come where we have to come together as a community and take action. We know what's wrong with the community as a whole. We know what's wrong with the island. What are we going to do to make the change, to progress towards a fairer Bermuda? The next two future leaders you will hear from, Marley Todd from Work Academy and Jaden Ferber Jacobs from the Barclay Institute, are perfect examples of what can happen when we look in the mirror to be the leaders that we are so much in need of. Each and every one of us must be the change. Okay. Head up. United we stand. Yay. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you to Raina DeFonce for the introduction. The part of the Future Leaders program that stood out to me the most was the Poverty, Crime, and Inequality Unit. Ms. Lynn Winfield of CURB, Citizens Uprooting Racism in Bermuda, came in to speak to us about the categories that our young, Black Bermudian men are boxed into every day and the long-term effects and legacies of systemic inequality. She started by drawing us a timeline of important events, dates, and people that had a huge impact during times of slavery, segregation, and even now. She touched on points that included Sally Bassett and the many different movements that have taken place in Bermuda, which we have built on today. Prior to this, we read a Royal Gazette article published in 2012. The main point of the article was that Black Bermudians with the same academic qualifications as their white counterparts are still earning significantly less, according to census statistics. The 2016 census showed a further decline of 13%. In 2010, the median annual income for Black residents holding a bachelor's degree was $80,640, compared to $105,753 for white residents. The article then goes on to compare this data with the data collected in the year 2000, which entailed that the gap had widened from 13.7% to 18.75% a decade later. Many may think that these statistics are especially shocking, being that in both the years 2000 and 2010, Bermuda had a Black government in place. What I took from this fact was that we all assume that just because we have a government that represents labor and the majority population, all our struggles regarding injustice will just disappear, when this clearly isn't true. After reading these shocking statistics, I thought immediately of the many mentors who came and spoke to us throughout the Future Leaders program, including the Honorable Wayne Keynes, Senior Magistrate Juan Wolf, Mr. Eugene Johnston, Human Rights Commissioner Danny Penn, and social entrepreneur Kristen White. Many of them, including Ms. Lynn Winfield, believe that it will take a long time to reverse all the impacts of systemic inequality. But by making more people aware, especially the youth, it will happen a lot faster. While there are programs that exist, like Future Leaders, I also believe that the youth would benefit from being educated on the history of the BIU marches that Raina spoke about and other demonstrations of activism against injustice while in schools. As recently, a group of my peers and I were asked questions on the history of Labor Day, and embarrassingly, we were unable to answer. Later on in the program, we were introduced to the idea of philanthropy, which allowed us to understand more global perspectives. Personally, I believe that although we have our own struggles, as Bermudians, we are still sometimes too comfortable, meaning that just because we're so lucky to live in such a wealthy and fortunate place, we forget that there's so much more we need to do in order to achieve not only a fairer Bermuda, but a fairer world. Ms. Kristen White, a social entrepreneur and cultural ambassador, elaborated on some of the ways that we may not even realize we are perpetrating injustice through our spending habits. One result that I found especially interesting was child trafficking and forced labor. As someone who prides herself on being fashionable, I was sickened to find out that some of the stores that I usually wouldn't think about spending twice as much, think about spending all my money in, do not pay their workers a livable wage for products that I can buy at a cheap price. She mentioned places such as Forever 21, Zaful, and even Victoria's Secret. A good point that Ms. White made was that anyone who feels obligated to make a change doesn't need to be rich or own a huge business in order to make enough of a difference to help. Indeed, much of history has shown that it is often the people who have the least who do the most to make a change for the better. Things such as boycotting businesses which participate in oppressive behavior, or, for example, if you're like me, and the majority of your wardrobe already comes from big brand stores, using your products to their full potential and donating them when we are finished using them. Overall, the message that I took from Ms. White was that instead of making excuses for not contributing, we should just go for it. After all, our intentions are positive and will make a difference, even if it's a little at a time. This tied in perfectly to our final unit, Taking Action, where we read an article called The Cycle of Cynicism, which mentioned the many traps that we often fall into that may prevent us from helping out in our community. One of the 10 traps was the false belief that one person can't make a difference. With huge problems in the world and our society, we often think that our little bit of good doing won't make enough of an impact on the problem itself. Even though it would be easier if all 7 billion people in the world played their part, the sad reality is that it isn't very likely to happen, at least not now. However, there are solutions that may seem small, but actually have a bigger impact in the long run. Often we rely on others to stand up and fight for things we want change in, when in reality, everyone playing their part can have a significant effect on how fast we break the inequalities, such as the income gaps, between men and women, blacks and whites, foreigners and Bermudians. Hopefully, opportunities like the ones we have here today will inspire us as the youth to speak out more and even challenge authority, a suggestion made on day 1 of the program by the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Keynes. Various movements and marches, such as the ones we are celebrating today by having this banquet, demonstrate that standing up for what you believe in, no matter the consequences, could help speed up the process of progressing towards a fairer Bermuda. All it takes is one person to have the courage to challenge authority and the status quo and take the first step. One person can make a difference, and it starts with each and every one of us. As part of the academic element of the Future Leaders program, at the end of each day, we were required to reflect on what we had learned through a series of written journal entries. The next voice you will hear from is that of fellow Future Leader and Barclay Institute student Jaden Ferber Jacobs, who will share a speech he made using excerpts from his reflection on his last day of the program. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before the Future Leaders program, I could honestly say that compared to now, I was quite oblivious to what was going on around me and in our community. Oftentimes, I would hear individuals on the street or in my family talk about what's wrong with our community. Normally, I would give a general nod, agreeing with what they were saying because they sounded as if they knew what they were speaking on. However, after 3 educational weeks at the Future Leaders Program of Bermuda, I can proudly say that I truly understand and am aware of the problems that we face within our community. I have learned that injustice everywhere is a threat to Injustice everywhere is a threat to justice. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Martin Luther King Jr. But what does this really mean? Yes, it's a powerful quote, but what are we meant to grasp from this? Allow me to share. When injustice happens to anyone or anywhere, it endangers everyone. It permits people to think that it is acceptable to act unjustly towards their peers and people in our environment. Maybe because of their social identity category, such as gender, age, race, nationality, or sexual orientation. This type of mindset can thus spread, creating an unjust community within Bermuda. Example, how is it that Bermuda is classified as one of the richest countries in the world with a GDP of $6.2 billion, but yet 23% of our people are living in poverty? 23%. That's 15,026 of our brothers and our sisters. That could be your neighbor, your colleague, your family, your friend, or even you. I see your expressions, and the truth is, yes, it does exist in Bermuda. This injustice is unacceptable, and because of this, inequality has become a reoccurring and worsening issue in today's society and in our community. Now, I could go through many detailed examples of inequality in Bermuda. For example, the stereotypes and labels that black males are given by the media and ourselves, the fact that many foreign workers are given more advantages over Bermudians with the same degree. Or I could even talk about how prices are going up in Bermuda while wages are going down. But no, what really stood out to me, personally as a young black male while I was at the Future Leaders Program, was that according to the 2000 census report, it shows that black Bermudians with the same academic qualifications as their counterparts were still earning significantly less. This injustice doesn't just affect the working class, but also the generation to come like me. For example, according to the 2010 Ronald Mincy report, entitled A Study of Employment, Earnings, and Educational Gaps Between Young Black Bermudian Males and Their Same-Age Peers, Ronald Mincy states on page 3 that young black Bermudian men may even be more reluctant to invest in their education because they were aware that they will earn less than their white peers with the same qualifications and cultural perceptions about their role as a black male in the workforce and society. Turning back to what I said earlier in the words of Martin Luther King Jr., injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This inequality and discrimination in our community are like chains, preventing us from being the best we can be, from reaching our full potential. It's time that we stand up and lead one another towards a better future, a better community, a better home. When I say we, I mean that any one of us can be a leader, someone who wants to work with others to make a difference. However, this kind of collaborative process requires that groups have trust in one another. The group members need to act in ways that are correspondent with their own beliefs and values, as well as the group's goals. In one of our units in the Future Leaders Program, we learned the social change model of leadership development, which says that in order for this to occur, there are 7 necessary values that every leader must be aware of, called the 7 C's. And first and foremost is consciousness of self. This means being aware of the beliefs, values, attitudes, and emotions that motivate one to act. These are your personal thoughts and feelings with no external influence that may alter your opinion and perception. 2, congruence. This is thinking, feeling, and behaving with consistency, genuineness, authenticity, and honesty towards others. 3, commitment. The psychic energy that motivates the individual to serve and that drives the collective effort implies passion, intensity, and duration. 4, collaboration. The ability to work with others in a common effort constitutes the cornerstone value of the group leadership effort because it empowers self and others through trust. 5, common purpose. To work with shared aims and values facilitates the group's ability to engage in collective analysis of issues at hand and the tasks to be undertaken. 6, controversy with civility. This is recognizing two fundamental realities of any creative group effort: that differences in viewpoint are inevitable, and that such differences must be aimed openly but with civility. 7, citizenship. The process whereby an individual and the collaborative group become responsibly connected to the community and the society through the leadership development activity. To be a good citizen is to work for positive change on the behalf of others and the community. All of this comes together to create an 8th C, which is change. Change is the value hub, which gives meaning to the 7 C's, and it is the ultimate goal of the creative process of leadership, to make a better world and a better society for self and others. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "A true revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies." On the one hand, we are all called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside, but that will only be an initial act. One day, we must come to see that the whole Jericho Road must be transformed so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make their journey on life's highway. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. Volunteering at homeless shelters or donating to food pantries may seem as though you are making a positive impact. But truthfully, this does not fix the problem at hand, but only delays it. We should not be giving hands out, but a hand up. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man a fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Should we be satisfied because we helped a single person that was in need, but yet didn't change anything to prevent other persons from falling into the same predicament? Marion Wright Alderman said, "If travelers are being assaulted on the Jericho Road, we should bind their wounds, but also work to make the road a safe passageway." This simply means that if people are being pummeled by today's unjust society, we, as citizens of our community, need to assist them, not just through initial relief that will create a never-ending cycle, but by equipping them with the necessary skills to help work towards improving our island home. Fighting to avoid the violence of joblessness, miseducation, poverty, and crime, the inequalities and injustices that feed and accompany them, and most importantly, to abolish the unjust systems that create them. In the spirit of Angela Davis, I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change, but changing the things I cannot accept. Our community is in need of a transformation. It's essential that we all commit to doing our part to eliminate the poverty, inequality, and crime so that we can begin to progress towards a better and fairer Bermuda. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ryan Robinson, Parent-Chief, and I'm the founder and director of the Future Leaders Program. Thank you. Now, I don't think there's much I can say that would impress you any more than what you've already heard tonight, so I'll be brief. I will say this. There are many places that a young person could be on a Friday night, but they are here. And they are here. Please, let's give them another round of applause. They've done their part, at least for now. But we have to ask ourselves, are we as a people doing enough? I was thinking about how a young person born when these future leaders were born have never known a Bermuda without gang violence, have never known a Bermuda without gun crime. I'm also thinking about the report that was released this week, which said that by the time they grow up and work, they won't have a pension to live off of. So at the current rate, we have to make sure that we're fulfilling our duty to leave a better Bermuda behind us, so that when they grow up, they're in a Bermuda that's better than the one that we were given. We've prayed, we have marched, we have voted, and then we celebrated. But as you just heard, our young people are still looking for examples of leadership. And that's each and every one of us. With that being said, the inspiration behind the Future Leaders Program was to ensure that we have young people who are understanding values and leadership principles and growing up in a Bermuda where they are aware of the issues and prepared to tackle them. So in that, having said that, I'd like to thank the BIU for this platform. I'd like to thank President Chris Ferber and the Bermuda government, the Cabinet Office, for supporting this program for the second year in a row, and I hope it's something that can continue. As you've seen, we have many examples of positive young people, despite what we may see, despite what we've been told should be stopping and searching young men like Jaden Ferber Jacobs behind me. And so when I speak of us doing our part, what I genuinely mean is a message that these young people gave today. I didn't write any of that. They were given a task, which was, the theme was Progress Towards a Fair Bermuda. They were challenged to look at the old materials from when they participated in the Future Leaders Program, and that's what they came up with. Please, let's give them another round of applause. With that being said, just to echo their message, we have to be the change. We don't have to rely on people that we've put in power to lead us. We also have to take up the mantle and step up and do our part. So whether that means engaging in a mentorship program or just teaching that young person in your home, we all have to be the change, and that's my message. For more information on the Future Leaders Program, you can visit futureleadersbda.com or contact me as we progress throughout the rest of the night. So many thanks, have a good evening, and thanks again to President Chris Ferber and the Bermuda government for supporting this program. We hope it can continue. Thank you.
Come on, give them a big round of applause. Stand, everybody stand. Come on. Your future. Give it up for our young people and Mr. Ryan Robinson of Future Leaders. I just want to inform everybody tonight, as has been requested, we are having an after party in the cellar after this function. So if you're not ready to go home. So with that being said, join me as I call to the podium your cousin, my cousin, everybody else's cousin, former BIU President Derek Burgess, who will be celebrating his 25th birthday on Sunday, who will introduce our guest speaker. After that, the soloist Keith Lee will perform, and after that, the voice you will hear will be of our guest speaker, Brother Delroy Duncan.
Good evening, church. As you probably, some of you may not be aware, Ryan Robinson is certainly my cousin. He is the son of former PLP minister Wayne Parent-Chief, so it's obviously he takes after his mother. Tonight, I want to thank the President of the Bermuda Industrial Union, Brother Chris Ferber, and former President Ottiwell Simmons. For this honor to introduce a person of such legal eminence. Our guest speaker was called to the bar at Gray's Inn in London in 1984 and at the Bermuda Bar in 1989. He was past president of the Bermuda Bar Association, also past honorary secretary of the Bermuda Bar. He is an associate member of Cloisters Chambers in the Temple in London, England. The Cloisters Chambers is where the late David Turner Samuels, QC, practiced law. Those of you who are old enough would remember that Mr. Turner Samuels represented members of the Bermuda Industrial Union who participated in the 1965 Belco riots. So I think our guest speaker was predestined to represent the BIU before he even entered this island. He has been extensively involved in litigation arising out of company and community disputes, commercial disputes, constitutional and human rights issues, and he has advised clients throughout the Caribbean, US, the UK, and the Far East. Our speaker's relationship with the BIU started in 1992, when he, along with Gillian Hall and Robin McMillan, represented the BIU in one of the most significant legal battles with the then UBP government, the sequestration, I'm like that young little lady, sequestration case. Cousin, I say that with respect. Where a judgment was made, in essence, to strip the BIU of all its assets. Also, failure to abide by the court order shall result in a daily fine of $100,000. The hearing case was held without the union being summoned or invited to present a defense. The union appealed the court order to the visiting law lords, who in their ruling stated that the courts were in breach of the rules of natural justice, in that the BIU was not afforded the opportunity to be heard. Therefore, the BIU were deprived of a fair hearing. They also stated that the Chief Justice erred in dispensing the application for a fine and sequestration and quashed the Chief Justice order. Then was the case of the ban on overtime that workers put at the docks. Industrial action, they called it industrial action short of a strike in the courts. The employers used an injunction that they had gotten about a year before this action to go back to court and reinstate the injunction. And that was ex parte. And normally in an ex parte hearing, a judgment order only lasts for 10 to 20 days. And then a full hearing is held. That was not the case in Bermuda. But we went to the Privy Council, headed by our guest speaker, and represented with a QC. And I can tell you, there was a great experience. In that Privy Council, the 5 law lords, all of them looked past the age of 75, but they were sharp. You can feel justice being served at that hearing by the questions they asked. They knew the case. They had done their homework. And they allowed the appeal of the Bermuda Industrial Union and awarded us costs. The ruling by the law lords in this case was significant because it set the standard for all cases concerning industrial actions short of a strike. In fact, it is the leading case and listed in all UK journals. And the case is labeled Burgess, Ferber, Smith versus Stevedore Services Limited, 2002, UK PC 39. Then recently, the case listed as Tweed and the Council of the Amy Churches versus the OBA's Minister of Labor and Home Affairs, when they wanted to deport Reverend Tweed out of this island. And the question is why? Tweed was only taking up the mantle that Reverend Monk started in in 1898 when he arrived in Bermuda to fight injustices. And any pastor in this country that's worth their salt, if they come in this country, if they pastor a church and the members are out on the streets fighting an injustice, that pastor should be there. Reverend Tweed was there. Reverend Tobic was there. Bishop Byrd was there. Larry Lowe was there. Now is Reverend Tweed, and we thank God for him. But our guest speaker successfully quashed that order, that deportation order. And we have Reverend Tweed with us tonight. When the OBA's finance ministry attempted to impose mandatory furlough days, cut hours and cut salaries of government workers, our speaker had that order quashed. As a result of that ruling, a 46-year precedent was overturned, which established that workers do have a constitutional right to strike. Out of these battles that the union took on, headed by their legal advisor, our guest speaker, as a result of the 1992, the 19 sequestration, I think it was 91, 92, sequestration, we got the 1992 Trade Disputes Act. And that act was why we got in a problem, because when the government tried to solve that case, they couldn't, because there was no law in place to compel the employers or the workers to accept arbitration. The union accepted arbitration, but the employees did not. So that act was put in place that a minister now can send any dispute, any trade dispute, to arbitration. And then we had a demonstration in 1996 to do with just shirts. And our legal advisor was there again, our guest speaker. And from that, because what happened, we used to go into workplaces and take a ballot, win the ballot, but the employer didn't have to recognize the union. So from that, we got the 1998 Act, which stipulates that if you get the majority of workers in the workplace that vote for a union, then you must recognize them. That came out of the struggle on the streets. That was led by our guest speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying Mr. Speaker, and he's not even here tonight. Well, you know, you need to excuse me. In our midst, we have some freedom fighters who's willing to take on the Goliaths of injustice with a slingshot of fearlessness. We have them in the name of Addie Simmons. We have them in the name of Molly Burgess, President Chris Ferber, President Jason Hayward, Reverend Tweed, Dr. Brown, and yes, Laverne Ferber. Mr. Speaker, they said Derek Burgess. Mr. Speaker, could you tell them don't say Derek Burgess? Let me say that it was Jillian Hole who graced the halls of our courts with wisdom and eloquence, made the application for our guest speaker to be called to the Bermuda Bar in 1989. Tonight, I present to you, after a selection from my cousin Keith Lee, our guest speaker, Delroy Ben Duncan.
Does the light come on? Does the light come on? Does the light? Does it come on? All right, okay. Thank you for the introduction. What an introduction. I hope you feel the same when it's over. It's good to be with you, a real honor, a pleasure, and a delight to be selected as the presenter for an event which is such a rich and august roll call of speakers. I must apologize to anyone who came tonight expecting to see the young buck on the front of the August edition of the Worker's Voice. If you've seen it, you'll see that there's a picture of Julian Hall, Robin McMillan, and somebody in the middle. If anybody is disappointed that they aren't seeing that young buck, they can call Laverne Ferber on 292-0044 and ask to get their money back. But it is a pleasure to be here tonight, and it is a pleasure to talk about the question that I've been posed, progress towards a fairer Bermuda. Unfortunately in life, not every question gets an answer, but my spirit told me I should respond to the question, progress towards a fairer Bermuda, by first briefly discussing some of the recent history of how workers in Bermuda, the BIU, and the other unions have made progress towards a fairer Bermuda in the courts. And secondly, setting out my view on how we embrace the impact of artificial intelligence in the working world to progress towards a fairer Bermuda. With the short amount of time I have, my talk will only deal with the contours rather than the detail of these two topics, in the hope that I can pique your interest, provoke your minds, and prompt you into action. But before I dive into what I have to say, the importance of providing the correct answer to a question is always critical when you're trying to get a job, particularly if it's a job in the trade union. This was no more evident than when two men went for an interview for a trade union position in the heart of London. Currently, trade union jobs in the UK are much sought after, so 200 people were going after 2 vacancies. So the first of these 2 men went into the interview, and when he finished, the other man said to him, "What were the questions? What were the questions? Tell me what the questions were." And the first man said, "The interview panel told me the questions are identical for everybody who comes for an interview, so under no circumstances must you tell anyone the questions. If you discuss the questions with another candidate, you're immediately disqualified." So the other man said, "Okay, don't tell me the questions, just tell me the answers." So this is how the interview went. The first question that the first man was asked was, when was the most important trade union legislation passed in the UK? And his answer was, well, it's really not right to pick one day when so many things took place. There was so much activity, so many meetings, so much discussion, but finally it was 1940. The interviewer said, that's a very good answer. So the second question he was asked is, who is the father of the trade union movement? He said, it's not fair to pick one person when so many people put so much effort into the enterprise. Why just pick one person when so many people had a hand in this? The interviewer was really impressed with that answer. And the third question was, should the agency shop be made compulsory for all workers? And the answer the first man said is, well, the president of the union is going to appoint a committee and research the matter. After the research is done, a report will be produced, and then I will be able to give a definitive answer to your question. The interviewer was really impressed with that. So the second man went into the interview, and the interviewer said, I'm looking at these forms, and I can't quite make this out. What is your date of birth? Well, it's not right to pick one day when so many things took place. There's so much activity, so many meetings, so much discussion, but finally it was 1940. The interviewer said, really? Can you help me with this? Your form is not complete. What is your father's name? Well, it's not right to pick one person when so many people put so much effort into this. Why just pick one person when so many people had a hand in this? By this time, the interviewer really thought something was up. So he asked him, have you lost your mind? Well, the president of the union is going to appoint a committee and research the matter. After the research is done, a report will be produced, and then I'll be able to give a definitive answer to the question. It's always important to make sure every question gets the right answer. So first, I'm briefly going to discuss, not in a lot of detail, because I know that there's a bit of a crunch on time, but first I'm briefly going to discuss some of the recent history of how the workers of Bermuda and the BIU have made progress towards a fairer Bermuda in the courts of these islands. And Brother Derek has gone through some of the cases, so I'm going to skip those to try and save time, but there are some points I think it's important to make. When I have had the privilege of being asked to represent the union and represent the workers of Bermuda, it's often climbing up the rough side of the mountain is what I hear from the workers. We're going into court, it's going to be really difficult, I mean, what do you think we're going to do? And when you reflect on what has taken place in the court battles that the union and the workers have had, in my view, the workers of Bermuda, the BIU and other unions have fought and won significant battles in the courts of Bermuda. And it's essential to acknowledge and remember that even a battle lost in the courts might be a victory in the consciousness of the mind of the employer and the heart of the nation. And that every battle, even a losing battle, eventually leads to a change in behavior, the writing of new employment laws, and if the cause is just and right, the law will change. However, when the workers of Bermuda and the unions of Bermuda have won significant battles in the courts, some of them have been at the cost of trying to ensure that even a defeat can be used as a platform for a victory. You've heard about the 1981 case before, but it's important to mention it to those who don't know about the BIU and the hotel workers' strike that took place in 1981. That was a significant case because the hotel employers sought an injunction against the BIU to restrain breaches of contracts and strikes. Although the Chief Justice ruled the conduct of the BIU was unlawful, he refused to grant the injunction, and that was a victory. That case has gone down in the annals of labor law history in these islands, establishing that workers are prepared to stand for a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. And they stood for that in the 1981 case. And they are to be commended because it's on the back of that case that many other cases have been fought. You've heard about the 1992 case with the sequestration case. That was fought in the Court of Appeal. But what people don't realize, and I had the good fortune to be in the midst of it, was the union was fighting for its very soul. If that sequestration order had gone through, the union that you have today would not exist. It would have been finished. And so that was one of the most significant court battles that this country has ever seen. And it was a victory. You've heard that 10 years later, in 2002, there was the attempt to try and force overtime work on dock workers. What people don't realize is that we lost in the Supreme Court. We lost in the Court of Appeal. We had 24 hours to file our application in the Privy Council and managed to file it within the 24 hours and ended up winning in the Privy Council. That is a significant battle that the BIU fought. So when workers say climbing up the rough side of the mountain, that was a significant victory. In 2003, we had the BAS Serco case against BIU. That was a case that we lost. And we lost it based upon a 1970 Privy Council case called Collymore. And I say that because it's quite important. That case, Collymore, had stood for years and said workers' unions do not have a right to strike in the face of any behavior. That precedent has been the bane of trade unions and employment lawyers for years. But in the 2016 Furlough Day case, in the face of the former Minister of Finance's attempt to impose mandatory furlough days on the workers of Bermuda, the court overturned that 1970 Privy Council case and said that when the court is faced with a minister who has said that employees are going to either lose their jobs or have a pay cut and strike, he said they have a right to strike. I cannot stand by the Collymore case. So now, as a result of the fight that all the unions in Bermuda took to the courts, workers have a constitutional right to strike. That is a significant victory, and the union should be applauded for that. These cases are only highlights. There have been other cases, demonstrations, arbitration disputes, all of which establish that both in victory and defeat, the workers of Bermuda, the unions of Bermuda, have fought significant battles in the courts of Bermuda which have created progress towards a fairer Bermuda. Now, on any view, these legal battles establish a strong tradition to be proud of. However, and I turn to my next topic, which I am quite passionate about, the spirit of the age we live in at present speaks to the urgency of addressing the future employment of Bermudians. In this brave new technological world, Bermudians must be prepared to pull away from safe moorings and grasp new working world conditions that we all face. And everybody in Bermuda, everybody in this room, needs to be prepared and get ready. The working world is going to change. I would have liked to have introduced the next phase of my talk with the catchy phrase, "I see the future, and it's an algorithm." But the reality is, it's on our doorstep right now. Whether we like it or not, the new technology, artificial intelligence, is creeping, dare I say, insidiously into many aspects of work on this island. This week I read, and I'm sure some of you already know, that in January of this year, Amazon opened a supermarket in Seattle, Washington, with no checkout operators or service tills, other than having someone to check ID. If a customer wishes to purchase alcohol, there is no human interaction at all. The system uses computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you'd find in a self-driving car. And some of you are going to enjoy this. One artificial intelligence system tested against qualified lawyers challenged them to predict the outcome of personal injury cases submitted to the legal ombudsman in the United Kingdom. The computer beat the lawyers. The computer was right 86% of the time versus lawyers 62.3% of the time. Some of you probably are saying, tell me something new. Another similar artificial intelligence system has been deployed to predict the outcome of employment law cases. So you won't need lawyers, you won't need judges. This is really significant stuff. Why is it important, and where is the technology taking the working world? Bermuda stands at an extraordinary moment of both tension and possibilities. Artificial intelligence can meet the current tensions we face with job losses if we grasp the possibilities the new technology offers. Artificial intelligence has been called the fourth industrial revolution, after the first industrial revolution, water and steam, the second, which used electrical power, and the third, which used electronics and information technology to automate production. Artificial intelligence can be deployed by businesses to enhance human capability and make our daily jobs easier, removing the repetition in some tasks and speeding up our efforts. But on the other hand, artificial intelligence could replace us and leave human workers access to requirements. In 2017, accountants PwC said 30% of jobs in Britain would be affected by artificial intelligence, including the retail sector. The report predicted that automation would boost productivity and create fresh job opportunities. But the report also said action was needed to prevent the widening of inequality in the working world, which is something Bermuda must be really conscious of. The PwC report went on to say areas of work likely to be affected include manual and routine tasks susceptible to automation, such as retail and administrative support services. So what is artificial intelligence? I haven't got enough time to go into a whole lot of detail, but it's simply the branch of computer science concerned with making computers behave like humans. The term was coined in 1956 by John McCarthy at MIT. It's a field of science comprising a large number of mathematical formulas or algorithms that create patterns that can be trained in new data that has not been seen before. One branch of that technology, which we have seen in Bermuda and is being discussed, is the blockchain. Everybody's heard that this government has taken on the initiative of trying to bring the blockchain industry to Bermuda. And that's important because they obviously see the future, they see the way things are going, and they are trying to equip us for what is coming around the corner. The blockchain is going to be the way that we pay our bills in the future. It's going to be the way we interact with local businesses. And so the question is, how could artificial intelligence affect Bermuda? Gone are the days, and this I say with some sadness, but gone are the days when job losses and redundancies in Bermuda made headline news in the Royal Gazette and on the evening electronic news. It's now all quiet. You now hear of job losses or people being laid off through the grapevine, WhatsApp, or friends and family. I'm not saying all redundancies and job losses are down to artificial intelligence. Many are down to the tailwind we are still suffering from the financial crisis in 2008. But artificial intelligence will have a significant effect upon re-employing some of those who have lost their jobs. So we must confront the new technology to ensure we progress towards a fairer Bermuda. I ask Bermudians not to look upon artificial intelligence in the same manner that many of us, me included, viewed the dawn of computers or the advent of email. We only joined the bandwagon once the technology became mainstream. We in Bermuda now have the opportunity to be ahead of the curve. I was told that in the gold trading industry, they have a saying, it's better to be a year early than a day late. One may ask, what industries in Bermuda could be affected by artificial intelligence? Well, these are examples of how traditional Bermuda industries are being affected around the world. Hospitality. The examples of artificial intelligence in the hospitality industry are wide-ranging. The Hilton Hotel, which some of you may have visited, some of you may have even experienced this, has created a robot called Connie. The robot can provide tourist information to tourists who interact with it. Most impressively, it can learn from human speech and adapt to individuals. Ultimately, this means the more customers speak to it, the better it will get. To direct messaging and online chat services responding to simple questions or requests. Chatbots have been utilized on social media platforms, and we all know how important social media is in Bermuda. Unfortunately, some of us spend a lot of time on social media, too much time, some may say, allowing customers to ask questions and get almost instantaneous responses, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is invaluable, the hotels are saying, because it provides the type of response times that are almost impossible to maintain with human-to-human interaction. Insurance. Artificial intelligence may already be applied to some of the insurance companies in this manner, but it's being used abroad to improve the claims process. Claims currently are touched by multiple employees. However, there's a new claims process called the touchless claims process that doesn't require any human intervention. This process uses artificial intelligence and other technology to report the claim, capture the damage, audit the system, communicate with the customer, no human intervention. And the insurance companies are pushing the artificial intelligence because they say it could also fight against fraudulent claims. Banking. Artificial intelligence technology now allows customers to search for information like how to open a bank account in a simple, immediate, and conversational way without human intervention. And by way of example, Bank of America, some of you may have accounts there, have launched a system called Erica. It allows customers to manage their savings with something called a predictive analytics, and it interfaces conversationally with you without the need for human intervention. It is scary. It's coming. And I've already expressed what's happening in the retail industry. Now, what can and must Bermudians and Bermuda do? Some may say, well, how will this affect my Bermuda? It's not going to affect me. I don't see it that way. Bermuda is a fashionable place to live and work. And if we're honest with ourselves, we like the best and the brightest the world has to offer. In one form or another, be it through the front door, where the technology is staring you straight in the face, the side door through outsourcing of Bermuda jobs overseas, or the back door by losing out to our competition overseas, we are going to be affected. So I urge the government, the private sector, our unions, the Bermuda school system, individuals, the nation to embrace this technology as a way of life, because that's what it will become for everyone. And I proffer 3 reasons that some of you, I'm sure, will be able to discern immediately. The speed and velocity at which technology and their advancements are affecting the world mean that Bermuda will either benefit or suffer from these changes. Never before have billions of people around the world been connected by mobile devices with unprecedented processing power, storage capacity, and access to unlimited knowledge. This means that new job opportunities can be created, but old, outdated jobs will be lost. The new technology allows members of this community who have not had the capital and business connections to compete against or with larger businesses. I've already expressed that I know firsthand this government is promoting the fintech industry. I'm also aware that there are a number of private institutions and organizations supporting coding for the youth. This government, I understand, is also promoting coding in the public education system. I'm advocating, in addition to all the things that we can do to help our government, that employers encourage and support employees who want to advance their knowledge and learning. And when I explain to you the tools that are available and the fact that they are free, anybody can use them, you will see that this is something that we should do and do now. We should be encouraging employees to work with artificial intelligence. Working with the artificial intelligence has the greatest likelihood, studies have shown, of leading to a sustainable working environment in the future. Humans definitely do have skills that artificial intelligence cannot replicate, but humans have to, and we all have to try and work out what they are, so that in 15 or 20 years' time, we're not sitting here saying, what happened? What happened? What happened to my job? Our competition, Singapore, Switzerland, Gibraltar, Malta, are embracing a digital future. They are racing ahead with it. the Minister of Information Technology has been flying around the world pushing Bermuda as a fintech jurisdiction. And he is aware of what strides these countries are making, which is why he has to go and try and push Bermuda and get us in the game. Because if we don't get in the game, these countries, particularly Malta, Gibraltar, Switzerland, Singapore, and I've even heard down in the Caribbean, they're now allowing cryptocurrency exchanges and creating jobs. We will be left behind. So we have to move with the times, stay ahead of the curve, and make sure that we embrace this technology. The best way to do this is to learn how certain companies, Google, IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, Alibaba, provide cloud-based artificial intelligence that requires no programming skills. So some of you are probably saying, that's too much for me, I'm done with that. The reality is, if you can use these skills, you can get on a computer and you can get them for free. You don't have to pay, you don't have to go do any courses. I've checked them out. It's the best way to learn this, so that even if you're not going to fight for a job because you say you're at the end of your working life, you know how to live your life in Bermuda and interface with the new technology that you're going to face when you try and pay a bill, go into any institution. Look what they're doing with the transfer of real estate. It's going to be on the blockchain. So we need to get up to speed with this and make sure we're not behind. Each of the cloud services that are offered by the companies that I just mentioned is available for free during a learning process. There are countless tutorials, online classes, case studies, examples, videos, and user groups. You can even use it for a business. If you want to start up a small business and you want to use some of that technology, you can go online and use it. But if you start a business, you have to pay. But you pay based upon how much time you use. But the importance is that if you just feel that the technology is beyond you and you don't want to go to an institution to learn it, you can take some time and go on your computer and learn it yourself. The opportunity is there, and I encourage everybody to take it. We must ensure that the new technology is in each Bermudian classroom, not only as something that is present but is predominant in the classroom so that the students can embrace this, ensuring that they can complete the technology integration in the classroom. With that, we will be setting Bermudian students up for a successful life outside of school, with the results that students using the technology in the classroom will be prepared for their digital future and the jobs that will be associated with a digital future. Now, we have to talk about the potential for redundancies and taking proactive steps now that will stop or reduce them. This union, the Trade Union Congress, must consider consultation with the government to prepare and implement a plan to address the issues that will be faced in both the private and public sector arising out of the technology. What I'm saying is not far-fetched. Let's be ahead of this curve, not behind it or alongside it. Right now, in some European countries, there are special rules created for a fairer consultation process if a company wants to introduce artificial intelligence. So the European countries are seeing what's happening and have already created a set of consultation procedures to deal with it. So as I wrap up, hopefully within my time, I was told a certain time I had to finish by Brother President. This technology is here. It's not going anywhere. It's already on our shores, even if its presence is not apparent. But at this time of extraordinary tension and opportunity, we must seize the opportunities the technology brings and shape a fairer Bermuda. We all have to be aware of where we are at this moment of time, who we are, and where we stand in the face of this new technology. And we must not be like the two men who staggered out of the bar, drunk, no idea where they were, no idea where they were going. And as they were walking down the street, a man walked up to them in a suit and tie, bowler hat, and umbrella. And one of the two drunk men said to the man, "Excuse me, sir, do you know where we are?" And the man was upset at the fact that they approached him. He said, "Do you know who I am?" And the other drunk man said, "Well, we're really in trouble now. He doesn't know who he is, and we don't know where we are." Thank you for giving me a hearing.
Let's give our keynote speaker another standing round of applause. At this time, I would like to call Brother Jamal Warren to do the presentation for the future leaders.
Yes, good evening. On behalf of all the members of the BIU, I would just like to give thanks to the young future leaders for your presentation and wish you well in your future endeavors. We have a token of appreciation from us. Okay, as you. Yeah. Okay, can I ask Marley Todd to come up first, please? Rihanna Defunts. Rihanna Defunts. Jaden Ferber Jacobs. Now that they're all here, can you give them one last round of applause?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Delroy, he always plays with me when he comes to Union Corner. Is your heart beating tonight? I'm going to call his partner, Sister Rochelle Duncan, to the podium. She said it would be an honor for Delroy to come and speak tonight because his love is here. And if any of you have ever had a physio appointment with Rochelle, yeah, I know. You come out brand new. So, Sister Rochelle, on behalf of the officers and members of the BIU, we want to thank you for allowing Delroy to come out here tonight. Thank you.
I now go to the podium, Brother President Chris Ferber, to do the thank you.
Well, I've got two functions this evening. Before I do the vote of thanks, I have to make a presentation to our guest speaker, so I'm going to ask Brother Adi. Yeah, you ain't getting away. And Brother Derek to come and join me, please. Now, initially, the plan was to introduce Delroy, and I ran it by Sister Ronnie. We had a conversation. And, of course, you know, we got overruled by the senior statesperson, right? Because we was trying to get Adi to do the beginning. Derek was going to do the middle, and I was going to do the end. But this one on my left says, you know what, that's not going to happen. So Derek had to do it all. But now you're going to present this to Delroy. Here you go.
Good evening, everybody. And yes, and thank you, Brother Chris. I've got a very expensive gift that almost broke me. And it is my pleasure, Delroy, to make this presentation to you and to thank you for an excellent talk. And it's something in the future and very much appreciated by everybody here. Thank you, Delroy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of night where we once of all have to give thanks. We have to give thanks to the Sept Fairmont Savannah Princess for this evening, providing the dinner and the venue. So can we give them a round of applause? And certainly we have to give our master ceremonies, Brother Andre Rochester, a round of applause. Brother Patrick Havard, who basically gave the welcome this evening. Thank you, Brother Patrick. And as always, the BIU pastor, Reverend Nicholas Genevieve Tweed from St. Paul's ME, thank you for the prayer. And certainly I want to say thank you to Brother Keith Lee, who provided the entertainment this evening while you were eating your dinner. Certainly, we also want to, again, thank Sister Laverne Ferber and Sister Phaedra Halls for the programs that you have in front of you this evening. And also a thank you to the Banquet Committee led by Sister Ronaldine Burgess, who was here a moment ago, and the rest of her committee, Sister Shirlene Simon, Sister Deanne Iris, Brother Jamal Warren, Brother Glenn Simmons, Sister Leah Richardson, Sister Janae James, Adam A. Tuzo, and of course, Brother Andre Rochester. Give them a round of applause, please. Now, certainly the thank you for Brother Delroy, and I refer to him as Brother Delroy. You know this, Brother Derek spoke about a QC in London. And when I called Trotten Duncan's office and I have an opportunity to speak to Florette, I say to her, can I speak to QC Duncan? Well, I say QC. And then she said, who? Mr. Lynch? No, not Mr. Lynch. I want to speak to QC Delroy Duncan, because that's what I refer to him as. And the reason why I refer to him as the QC is because of what you heard about him this evening. The advice that he's given to the union for the past 25 plus years has been second to none. And there are very few, probably just a handful, maybe about 5, and it could be less than that. I don't think it's much more than that. They know anything about labor law. There's a lot of lawyers that practice labor law and think they know the labor law, but they don't. So certainly every time the BIU has gotten in any kind of predicament in race to the law, we've reached out to Trotten Duncan, spoke to Delroy, and almost 100% of the time, you might say, well, why it's not 100%? Well, it's 99. And the reason why it's 99, because we had a case that he couldn't help us with. And Mr. Duncan knows, he really knows that I was not happy as the BIU president, and the BIU was not happy that we couldn't have him represent us. But we understood. And because of the relationship that we built over those 25 plus years, we were able to get past that and move on to make sure that when we came up with the challenge with the furlough days, that we can get the right outcome. And certainly he's always willing to give us the advice that was needed over the years to make sure we can have the proper outcome. So certainly, some of the things that he talked to us about this evening, I'm not going to touch all of them, I'm only going to touch just a couple of them, because I think that the biggest one for me is blockchain. And the reason why I say the biggest one for me is blockchain is that a lot of people don't realize exactly what is happening with this new technology. Because I can tell you, and I've said this and I will continue to say it, that the people who control all the wealth of the world are not going to let you come and destroy the economy that they built. And this is just briefly. The World Bank and the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund. Those two organizations, provided that, and I say provided that, if you get 70% of the people in the world that want to go to blockchain, then you're good. But if you only get 30%, between 25 to 30%, they're saying, no, this is not going to happen. So they'll go with the majority. So the challenge is going to be is to make sure that we do what needs to be done, the education process that needs to take place. And I think as Delroy said a moment ago, if you think about, and it's scary, this new technology. I don't know if many of you remember the movie that Will Smith was in called I, Robot. This is what this reminds me of. It reminds me of watching that movie, watching a robot come in and do practically everything. Remember when Will Smith went to his mother's house? And he's eating, I think he's eating a piece of pie or whatever he's eating. And he thought his mama made the pie. And the robot came walking around the corner. And his mama said, that's who made the pie. He practically stopped eating the pie. So it's this is a very challenging time for Bermuda as a country. So certainly we've got to make sure that as a country, that the government is trying to do all the correct things to make sure that, you know, as a jurisdiction that, and I think you heard one of the future leaders speak, talked about our GDP, yeah? And how we could be the fourth richest country in the world, but have these kind of problems every year? Well, how does this happen? Well, I can tell you how it happens. It's no different than all the other countries around the world. Only 1% of people or 2% control all the wealth. And until you fix that, well, we're going to continue to have our challenges. So certainly I think that with what the advice that Delroy has given us this evening, then it's food for thought. But we simply cannot take those things for granted. The government right now is looking at, and I think it was said by the Premier tonight, that the government has adopted this living wage report from the Joint Select Committee. And what's going to be critical going forward is that, and you should have seen something in your program tonight. I put it in there intentionally to just spark something. Because over the next 10 days to 2 weeks, you're going to see a report from the BIU in relation to exactly what happened to your earned income, or what's happened to your earned income, what's happened to your disposable income, or your purchasing power over the past 30 plus years. And you're going to see exactly what happened and why it needs to be fixed. Because contrary to what a lot of people think, is that we ignored it, and now we can't ignore it anymore because it's front and center. And all it simply means, and it's only just, it's not that difficult to understand how a lot of people, how we think that it is. But you can, and I'd like to, just for a moment, if you don't mind, Dr. Bowe, for many, many years, was telling employers, governments, that there's something wrong with this basket that you are calculating. And everything that Dr. Bo was saying in the late 70s and early 80s all came true. Why? Because when you look at what happened with the rate of inflation and household expenditure supposed to work together with each other. At least that's the way I think it is, because you can't say that just the consumer price index, it's got all the household expenditure items in it. And then you allow the household expenditure to outstrip the rate of inflation and then wonder what happened. And then wonder what happened. In any rocket science, it's right there in front of you. It's in black and white. So when we sit down and have that conversation about a living wage, we've got to put all the right people in the room so we can get the right result. And I agree with the lady that called Union Corner. It shouldn't take us another 5 years to get this done. We know the problem. Now, whether it takes us a year, or 18 months, it certainly shouldn't take us 5 years. So certainly, I also would like to thank each and every one of you again for coming this evening, and being with us at this 37th Annual Labor Day Banquet. Last year, what you noticed tonight? I didn't ask you that. What you noticed tonight? Anybody notice anything different? What's that? Yeah, the head table's going. So we made a decision to get rid of the head table this year, put the head table down the front. Bit of a change. And certainly we hope you welcome that change. But as I said once again, thank you for coming this evening again, and we look forward to your continued support over the years. I left anything out, Ronnie? Got everything? Andre, thank you. Yeah, I did. I didn't officially really thank the future leaders for their presentation. Certainly, I think that when you look at just the thought process of developing a future leaders program, it lets our young people know that we're thinking about them. So I certainly want to, on behalf of the executive board, and certainly, if you don't mind, on behalf of everybody that's here at the BIU Labor Day Banquet, thank Mr. Ryan Robertson, Parent Chief, for what he's done for the future leaders. Thank you. No, that's not my job. This is his job.
Let's give brother. Yes. Let's give Brother Chris a big round of applause for his thank you. Once again, we'd like to thank everybody that participated in tonight's banquet. And we'd like to say we'll see you on Monday. Don't forget, Ronnie wants to see every last one of you down in the cellar this evening for the after party. And we look forward to seeing you on Monday at the march. Thank you. God bless and drive home safely.